Welcome back to the show. Tonight, in a special end of week mini podcast, we're comparing two competing Save College Sports plans. And make no mistake about it, college sports needs to be saved because apparently the only thing more abundant than transfer portal entries is reform proposals.
And I'll tell you right now, most of these solutions are just new ways to sell the same chaos.
That's facts. So here are the two headlines. We've got Jim Cavalli and athletes.org with a proposed CBA framework, which, if you've been following along this week, you know CBA is a collective bargaining agreement that basically proifies, right, the whole structure. And then we have Cody Campbell with a plan built around media rights reform and an NCAA replacement concept, which absolutely has to happen, trying to stop Olympic sports from getting executed in the budget meeting. Campbell's big move is the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961. He's saying pro leagues can bundle TV rights because the law and antitrust structure allows it. College can't because conferences, and there are a lot of them, conferences own rights, and bundling would raise antitrust issues.
So his pitch is basically, if the costs are going pro, the revenue needs to go pro too.
Exactly. Cody claims bundling could generate $4 to $7 billion in additional revenue. And he frames this as a way to protect women's and Olympic sports and really any sport that doesn't turn a profit.
I lean heavily toward this. I like the fact that somebody is saying Olympic sports out loud, because right now the system is built to eat them first. We are strangling the Olympic pipeline.
Look, I'm going to go off script here for a second. The Olympic pipeline is important. It's how we represent our country to all the other powers in the world, and the funding for it absolutely should not be cut. So there's a lot of people that agree with me about the importance of Olympic sports. So now people are pushing back. Conference commissioners have warned about the unintended consequences and have even questioned whether pooling rights would really increase revenue.
So the claim needs scrutiny, but at least the target is a real structural problem.
Then there's the governance piece. Campbell supports replacing the NCAA with something like the U.S.C, modeled after the U.S.OPC, federally chartered, privately operated. His concept paper says this body would set national standards on NIL, eligibility, recruiting, health, revenue sharing, and pretend I'm speaking in italics, and preserve women's and Olympic sports, with athletes holding at least 1/3 of the governance roles.
That's at least a structure that admits we need national rules without pretending the NCAA is still trustworthy.
And the NCAA is not trustworthy. Just my 2 cents. So let's talk about athletes.org's CBA framework. Remember, that's the collective bargaining agreement. And for those of you that don't know, all major sports, the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, the MLB, they all have collective bargaining agreements. Even the minor league baseball players have a collective bargaining agreement. It's one of the things that defines the difference between college sports and professional sports. So the athletes.org CBA framework, this is where the fork in the road between Campbell's plan and Kamali's plan becomes a canyon. Athlete.org proposes replacing the patchwork with a system where schools use a standard athlete agreement and pay athletes in a single consolidated income stream. And it explicitly says these agreements would pay athletes for athletic services, not just NIL rights.
That's professionalization. Full stop. That's not NIL. I support athletes monetizing their NIL, but this turns college athletics into a mini pro arena, and that's a bridge too far.
Right. Like I said, I support NIL, real NIL. But when you're paying for athletic services, you're building a mini pro league inside of a university. And we are absolutely, this is my soapbox, we are absolutely devaluing the actual point of college, which is education. This makes me sad. It also makes me angry. And then there's the agent regulation, which I've talked about earlier this week. The framework says that athletes.org would register, verify, and certify agents, and colleges would work exclusively with the athlete's registered representative.
Which sounds like order, until you realize you just created another central gatekeeper.
And we just lived through decades and decades of a central gatekeeper and the NCAA. So basically, Cavalli replaces the NCAA's monopoly with their own Players Association monopoly, and they are also the ones fighting to make the transfer portal free agency, destroying the very joy and the loyalty of 4 years at one place. So, Michael, which save actually saves college?
Here's how I see it. Campbell is trying to keep the whole ecosystem from going bankrupt, especially the sports that aren't printing TV money. Cavalli, on the other hand, is trying to formalize the athletes as employees model.
Without actually calling them employees, but that's an argument for another day. Anyway, yes, that is the cleanest summary. Campbell is playing defense for the existence of the broad college sports ecosystem. Cavalli is building a new ecosystem where the student part becomes optional. I just don't even know what we're talking about, and where he and his organization actually benefit. And if we don't value education, we're done, because the whole justification for college sports collapses when the campus simply becomes a backdrop. So here's the homework. Whenever someone says this will save college sports, you need to ask, save what exactly? The football payroll, the Olympic pipeline, education, community tradition?
Because if we don't define what we're saving, somebody else will define it for us and then send us the invoice.
So that's it. We'll be back with more, because the reform industrial complex never sleeps. Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to the AAA Ball and Play podcast. Quick note, this is for education and entertainment. Nothing here is legal, tax, or financial advice, and nothing we say creates an athlete-agent relationship. Listening or contacting us does not make us your lawyers or your agents. For advice, talk to a qualified professional in your state.